MechWarrior 5 Clans, developed and published by Piranha Games, is still in a pretty rough technical state. I played it on the Xbox Series X and PC through Game Pass Ultimate, where it was a day one release, but you can also get a copy on the PlayStation 5 and on PC through Steam. So, is MechWarrior 5 Clans worth playing? This review is going to answer that question.
We remember the bravery of our ancestors who gave themselves to the void, and of the despots responsible for their exodus. Through our strength, we lead the Crusaders to see the Great Father's dream realized. His hidden hope to one day return and reclaim paradise. It is our sole purpose, our divine right. We will bring vengeance down upon the tyrants that enslave humanity. And they shall tremble before our might.
Right off the bat, let's start with the graphics and technicals. Graphically, MechWarrior 5 Clans has to make some serious compromises to its graphics to maintain a stable frame rate, even on PC. There can be a lot of action on screen at times, with mechs and tanks firing weapons everywhere, and that can make even the best PC bog down if you try to push the envelope with graphics. Piranha Games wisely chose to lower the graphics in order to keep the frame rate in a playable state, aiming for 30 FPS on console. But that requirement made them lower or change a lot of the objects in the environment to keep up with the action. Take the particle effects, for example. Things like the haze of heat over the ground, fire in buildings or on mechs, the smoke that rises from smoking husks or the remains of cities. Each of them look like low-res JPEGs placed in an odd and noticeable way. These effects can have a huge impact on the frame rate, so it's understandable that they had to be the first thing to go, but it did remind me of early PlayStation or Xbox games where developers were still trying to figure out how to make fire and other effects look real. The game is also not free of bugs and technical issues. I had multiple crashes, booting me to the Xbox home screen on console and the desktop on PC. The jank in MechWarrior 5 Clans is real. The physics being used has some serious bugs. I had tanks flying across the screen when I hit them, mechs would ragdoll, which is funny considering they weigh up to 100 tons and are as big as apartment buildings. Dead enemies melt into the ground or float across the screen. But there is no bug worse than the audio glitches. They hit you in the face as soon as you load into the game. There are noticeable absences in music and sound effects. The main screen looks like it should have this epic music playing, but it's utterly silent. You will have mechs move and not make a sound, dropships that burn trails of fire that should be roaring across the screen. They land completely stealthily. Voices glitch out very frequently, making subtitles mandatory even in cutscenes. Then there are the voice actors themselves. They routinely mispronounce or change dialogue, making the subtitles different from what they're saying. It's like the subtitles were pulled off the script while the actors may have changed things up or made a mistake, and no one amongst the developers noticed. It happens enough that I felt the need to call it out. Overall, I think MechWarrior 5 Clans needed a few more months of polish before being released, and I encourage you to wait until a few more patches are released before paying for it.
You are currently behind the controls of mankind's premier weapon of war, a clan Omnimech. Although this is a training exercise, you are still controlling 4 stories of ferrous steel and Myanmar muscle strapped to a fusion engine. More than enough power to kill and be killed. You will respect that fact while you live under my command. If you do not, I will kill you myself and spare the laborer caste your incompetence. Now, follow the marked nav route.
Reactor online. Sensors online. Weapons online.
Let's talk about the story of Clans. MechWarrior 5 Clans takes place in the Battletech universe, which is a tabletop RPG that I absolutely adore. I played all the previous MechWarrior games over the years, and I was a regular player of the tabletop RPG. The lore of Battletech is great, although it can be dated at times, it still holds up rather well. The premise is actually really simple. Humans develop the ability to travel faster than light through the use of jump ships. This basically allows a ship to go from one location to another nearly instantaneously, but there is a limit. First, these ships can be very finicky and they break rather easily. Secondly, the range is very limited, so you can't exactly jump across the galaxy. Third, they are super expensive, so only the government and rich corporations could afford them at first. Finally, they require massive recharge times after each jump, sometimes up to weeks before they can be used again. The creation of jump ships led to a rapid expansion over the next few centuries, with many systems around the galaxy being inhabited, creating the inner sphere. But problems immediately cropped up. You can't rule a vast area of space timely from one planet such as Earth, or Terra as it's called in Battletech. The government abandoned nearly all of these new colonies, and when they were left to fend for themselves, most of these colonies had to take extreme steps to stay alive. Democracy in Battletech is so rare that it's almost extinct. Instead, most planets are ruled by a house or a faction. Mechwarrior 5 Clans takes place in 3049, nearly 1,000 years after the first explosive growth of interstellar expansion. The inner sphere has been divided into factions, where centuries of warfare have left them technologically regressed compared to how things were during the golden age of the Star League. The Star League was basically a super government that all the factions belonged to and was considered the pinnacle of humanity's progress. But when the Star League fractured, the wars that followed left a lot of the planets in ruins and resulted in a lot of lost tech, or technology that people could just not understand how to recreate or even how it works. Enter the clans. When the Star League was about to fall, one of the generals saw what was about to happen and how the entire inner sphere was about to kill each other in an unending series of wars. So he took most of his troops and his mechs, these giant machines of war, with him to a new place far away from the inner sphere. There, they eventually developed into the clans. There are a lot of clans, but Mechwarrior 5 Clans has you take the role of Jaden, one of the mech warriors of the clan Smoke Jaguar. This is, in my opinion, one of the most clan-like clans of all the clans. They are the definitive example of clan life taken to the extreme. Clans are like families, sometimes literally, since they all follow the same genetic heritage. Clan members come in two types: freeborns, who are naturally created, and trueborns, who are genetically enhanced and created from the best genes. The clans all compete against each other for resources and honor, but unlike the inner sphere, the clans never lost their technology. While they haven't significantly advanced over the centuries, as you would expect, they are doing way better than the inner sphere. In fact, when a group of clan mech warriors came to the inner sphere disguised as mercenaries called Wolf's Dragoons, secretly from Clan Wolf, they used a lot of old mechs in an attempt to blend in. Turns out what those clans considered old and bad from their perspective was light years ahead of anything the inner sphere had remaining. This conflict sets the stage for Mechwarrior 5 Clans. They had always expected to one day return and retake the inner sphere, but the timing of when they were going to do that had always been in doubt. They were aware of the situation there and how regressed the technology of the houses had become. One day, this inner sphere ship stumbles upon the clan homeworlds and everyone there loses their minds.
The great houses of the inner sphere know the secret location of our homeworld. Now, it is only a matter of time before they bring their greed and their never-ending wars to our doorsteps. The great debate over our return to the inner sphere ends now. We must act! My gods, it is finally time for the children of Karinsky to return home!
The clan homeworlds were specifically selected to be hidden and secret, so the arrival of an inner sphere ship sets off this chain reaction, which culminates in the invasion of the inner sphere by several of these clans. The game begins with Jaden and his sibkin, basically his genetic siblings from the same lineage that grew up together, passing their trials to become mech warriors. After the invasion begins, Jaden goes to the inner sphere with his clan to begin taking territory. This is where the game gets bogged down story-wise. The clan invasions are a big deal in the Battletech universe. A new force with advanced technology appearing out of nowhere sent the Inner Sphere into panic. There are books upon books detailing this time period, with hundreds of worlds being contested. So how do you condense that into a single game? Mechwarrior 5 Clans does it very poorly. I don't want to spoil things in the story if you choose to play clans, but just be aware there isn't a diverse selection of worlds to go to, like in Mechwarrior 5 Mercenaries. You won't be exploring the galaxy there. You're forced to do missions on a world before progressing to the next world, all under orders from Clan Smoke Jaguar. The story and the entire game itself is very linear, and I found myself missing the sense of adventure and choice that was offered in Mechwarrior 5 Mercenaries and the Battletech games. But the story itself is pretty good, if you enjoy the lore of the clans and their invasion of the Inner Sphere. Unfortunately, the game takes for granted that you're a fan of the series. They don't make much of an effort to explain what's happening, what the deal is with the clans or the Inner Sphere. If you're a newcomer to the series, you might want to check out the wiki for the more confusing aspects of the lore, particularly many of the locations, names, and terms they throw around. You can get a lot from context, but it would be helpful to include a codex as a refresher. There also isn't a satisfying conclusion to the story. It ends with a choice between two paths. Again, without spoilers, this choice comes out of left field and makes no sense based on the characters. It tries hard to make both options viable, but neither work in the context of the characters. But regardless of which option you choose, the game ends with things in limbo. It's understandable in a way. The clan invasion lasted a long time, and it would be hard to capture in a single game. The cliffhanger ending makes for future DLC and sequels, but if you are aware of the lore, you know what's coming.
You handled that mech well, girl. But lucky for me, your lot is as dumb as a pile of rocks. I'll be back to reclaim what is mine soon enough. In the meantime, you all don't look up at the sky too hard. Your brains might fall out.
Gameplay in Mechwarrior 5 Clans has been significantly changed compared to other entries in the Mechwarrior series. You could make the argument that it's a way to streamline it for easier access for new players, doing away with the complicated systems to focus on the action, but it's also watered down compared to Mercenaries. Let's begin with the mechs themselves. You are very limited in your selection of mechs. Unlike Mercenaries or Battletech, you can only use clan-exclusive mechs that you slowly unlock through a progression system called Honor. Mercenaries and Battletech had you starting out with the light class mech, these old and battered machines with terrible weapons. As you progress through those games, you would collect scrap and pieces of mechs or sell things for money until you could afford bigger and better mechs. Clans isn't like that. Clan Smoke Jaguar looks down on any of the Inner Sphere technology, refusing to allow you to use them. So if you're using a light class mech and you find it down, say, Assault class, too bad, you can't use that one. Each of the clan mechs retain the size ratings of the previous entries with a specific tonnage to classify them as. Missions have a tonnage rating, or basically a limit of how big of a mech you can deploy. A major part of the other Mechwarrior games is designing your perfect mech. You may have the frame, but you can put on any type of weapon that you want. If you hate jump jets, you get rid of them for more armor. You like lasers over missiles. You use the extra weight for that component. Clans does away with that mostly, since in the lore they have developed Omni-mechs. Omni-pods for those mechs are interchangeable weapon systems that can be easily swapped out. You are encouraged to use these preset weapon loadouts for the mechs you buy, and as you use them, you gain XP. The XP can be used to upgrade the maneuverability or speed of your mech, but it can also unlock additional Omnipods. I can understand the intention here. Designing a mech was easily the most complicated part of previous Mechwarrior games. Buying a frame and putting the guns you want on it took a lot of time, and it was easy to mess it up. For example, maybe you put too many lasers on it and not enough heat sinks. Good luck firing more than once without overheating. But clans went too far in the streamlining direction, in my opinion. They actively made it difficult to customize your mech the way you want. Sure, you can swap out weapons and stuff, but you don't have a lot of tonnage to work with. It's like each mech was meant to operate within a certain role, and if you deviate too much from that role, the game blocks you. Aside from unlocking mechs with honor you gain through missions, you can buy additional unlocked mechs with money called Kerenskis. I'll be honest, money is never a problem in this game. You can outfit your entire star, which is like 5 members of your Mechwarrior team, with the money they give you, always with the best and biggest mechs available. Tonnage on missions is more of a limiter on your mechs than money, and you will never run out of money provided you sell off your old, smaller mechs as you go, since you never need them. There is never a need to go back down in size of a mech, as long as you are within the tonnage deployment range. There's never a mission that requires you to drop your heavy mech and grab a light for speed. It's always about getting the biggest and strongest mech, since you're going to be taking a pounding on these missions.
Look!
The difficulty and balance in Mechwarrior 5 clans needs a lot of tweaking. Right off the bat, some weapons are way better than others. If you have lasers on your mech, they are overpowered. They kill everything in a few hits. Sure, you overheat while you use them, but if there's a body of water to keep you cool, which most of those maps have, you can shoot them as much as you want without worrying. It feels like the time to kill has been modified since Mechwarrior 5 Mercenaries. There, each mech was a tank that took forever to kill, requiring you to pound away at their armor before taking them down. Here, I can easily strike a cockpit with a barrage of focused laser fire and take out even an assault class in seconds. But on the reverse side, each mission in the game is a slog of combat. You fight waves and waves of enemies, many times your number, and almost always in a class as big as your own. I started the game in normal difficulty, but I had to drop it down to story mode after the first boss encounter. Part of the reason why I had to do that was that some enemies, particularly flying jets with boss health bars, are damage sponges that stay at long range, meaning if you lost some components or you're stuck with close range weapons, you can't really beat the mission. The other reason why I had to drop it down is the fact that the AI is terrible. Most enemy mechs focus on you exclusively, since you're leading your star forward and your allies are formed up on you, meaning they're standing behind you. You're taking the brunt of damage, and your AI companions spend as much time shooting each other and you in the back as they do fighting the enemy. Mechwarrior 5 Mercenaries also had terrible AI, both for teammates and enemies. Enemies would appear in set locations in waves, and clans does little to fix it. There's almost no tactics, despite the game giving you some tools such as a tactical map for deployment of your allies. If you try to use that tactical map in a fight, you'll just be standing there taking fire while doing nothing else. The best you can hope for is to run forward, drawing enemy fire, then retreat behind your allies for cover. Thankfully, when you inevitably die, you can take control of one of your allies' mechs. You can also play this game with friends, with them taking control of your AI allies, but I didn't test how good the connections were there. Going back to difficulty, even dropping it down to story mode, I found there were times when I was getting swamped by enemies. Some of the later missions have you facing dozens of mechs with very few repair stations along the way. I'm sure somebody could beat this game on the harder difficulties, probably by using cheap tactics like long-range lasers and sniping enemies slowly. But I found that just wasn't a fun way to play.
What perfect timing. Some fool of a clan has entered Huntress space looking for a fight.
Who do you think it is, Galaxy Commander?
The Nova Cats. We won a series of trials against them recently, and Khan LaRue is looking for retribution. Star Colonel Dita, what clan dares challenge us in our home system?
None, Galaxy Commander.
Explain.
A jump ship has materialized at Huntress's nadir point, but it is not clan in origin.
How is that possible?
After each deployment, you return to your base to repair your mechs. Technicians can be assigned to your mech for repairs, but each tech can only do so much work. So you buy more or upgrade their abilities with points, and these can also be spent to unlock new mechs and upgrade your research. Each mission gives you so much salvage that you can spend on research, giving you percentage bonuses to things like armor or your weapons. You are typically swimming in salvage, so you won't have much worries about selecting research opportunities. Finally, there are the pilots themselves. You have 5 people on your team, and they can earn XP after each mission. You upgrade them to give them better skills, like an increase to a specific type of damage or evading damage. Overall, my opinion of Mechwarrior 5's gameplay is this. It's closer to Mech Assault than it is the Mechwarrior. It feels like they created an arcade story mode for Mechwarrior rather than an RPG game. If you're looking for a true Battletech experience, it's not quite the same as Mechwarrior 5 Mercenaries or Battletech 2018.
Today, our long journey through the Exodus Road has come to an end. Now, we begin the first stage of Operation Revival by laying claim to the outer periphery. We will tame this savage outback to use as our staging ground to bring vengeance down on the tyrants that rule over the inner sphere. And they shall tremble before our might.
Let's end the review with the pros and cons of Mechwarrior 5 Clans. For the pros, the story is really good, particularly if you're a fan of the lore and we're hoping to finally see the invasion of the inner sphere. We get to play as Clan Smoke Jaguar, the first time we get to do so in a video game. There are a lot of missions on the campaign, and it should take you about 20 or 30 hours to finish. But for the cons, there are a lot of technical problems, including audio cutting out and missing audio clips. Companion and enemy AI is still bad. Balancing and difficulty need some work. Some weapons are crazy overpowered, like the lasers. RPG elements have been streamlined, mech customization and choice has suffered the most in there. Missions are very on rail, with maps being pretty corridor-like. And that's it for another review. In my opinion, I would check out Mechwarrior 5 Clans through Game Pass. If you're looking to buy it, hold off for a few more patches. Thanks for watching, and make sure to leave a like or comment and subscribe to the channel. I'm the Casual Console Gamer, and I'll see you all in the next review.